Our next chapter in this conference is a conversation on playing offense. If we're going to build a Liberty coalition, we can't simply tell Pennsylvanians what we're against. We have to tell them what we're for and that we have a better way. We have two wonderful experts, folks that know a great deal about policy, but just as important, they know about how we can tell it to our neighbors so we can win elections to make a difference. First, to join the conversation will be Victoria Coates. She's with the Heritage Foundation as a senior fellow, working at the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom. She works on global energy security against Chinese predatory activity, works on Middle Eastern affairs. She knows her stuff. She was previously Deputy National Security Advisor for the Middle East and North America. She has many degrees from universities, including a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania. Joining her is Charles Mitchell. Charles is the president and CEO of the Commonwealth Foundation, an organization we know just as well. Charles grew up in Philadelphia suburbs. As he likes to tell everybody, he's a Delco guy. He's a graduate of public schools, Bucknell University, the Koch Associate Program, Claremont Institute's Publius Fellowship. He's been associated with the Commonwealth Foundation since 2006 and now serves, as I said, as their CEO. He's been recognized as City and State's one of their 40 under 40. I just missed 40 under 40. Anyway, in addition to Commonwealth, Charles is involved in his community, including being an elder in his church. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to understand issues, policies, and more importantly, how we get to win elections and put them into practice, here are two experts, Victoria Coates and Charles Mitchell.
Hey, Victoria. Victoria.
Oh, we're over here. Good to know.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. They did let a Delco guy in here, but I would like to tell you that in honor of parts of Victoria Coates' biography that you were not told, namely her experience as the Chief Foreign Policy Advisor to United States Senator Ted Cruz and Texas Governor. Oh, we like Ted here, okay.
What's not to like?
Exactly. And I don't know if you guys are going to clap for him, former Texas Governor and also Energy Secretary Rick Perry, who I think is a former PLC speaker. I dressed for the occasion today. I wore my cowboy boots in honor of Victoria's CV.
Ted also spoke here in 2015.
I remember. I was here. In fact, I've been coming to this conference since I was in college, Victoria,
okay.
If that's any. And I'm no longer eligible for the 40 under 40 award, in case any of you out there are wondering. And I'm not, even in my old age, I'm not an eligible bachelor. I have a wife and 4 kids. I'm not advertising my age to try and get dates. In fact, some of my daughters will be here later. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're here to talk about playing offense for conservative principles. And if you didn't know, 2024 is going to be a really important year, but 2023 is a big one. Here's why. The Heritage Foundation exists because lawmakers, politicians, governors, presidents rely upon permanent freedom infrastructure for their ideas, for the support that they need to get their job done. The Heritage Foundation really proved that model in the 1980s. What you may not know is this year is the 50th anniversary of the creation of the Heritage Foundation back in 1973. And it's the 35th anniversary of what I hope is one of the Heritage Foundation's favorite daughters and sons, Victoria, which is the Commonwealth Foundation, which was inspired by Heritage Foundation to open its door in 1988. So I think that might have something to do why we're here today, Victoria. Now, since our theme is playing offense for conservative principles, you made a choice, Victoria, here in Heritage's 50th year, to join my friend Kevin Roberts, the new president of Heritage, who also has outstanding footwear choices, if I may say so myself as a Texan. You made a choice to join Heritage. We hear a lot these days from Heritage about playing offense for conservative principles. That's the reason for our theme today. What does it look like to you, working at Heritage, having been Deputy National Security Advisor, all the stuff you've done, what does it look like today for conservatives to play offense for our principles?
Well, thank you, Charles, and everybody here at the conference. Really appreciate all of the support and organization that goes into this, and then to all of you for being willing to take time out of your busy schedules to listen to us and participate in the fight we'll all be fighting over the course of the next 18 months. I think we can say 18 months now. I'm really tired of saying 2 years. I'm ready for it to be 18 months. In terms of fighting for conservative principles, that's actually precisely why I went to Heritage. I have enormous respect, obviously, for the institution and great affection for its leaders, including Ed Fulner, a dear friend. But the presence of Dr. Roberts at Heritage was really a game changer for me, because Kevin is a absolutely unapologetic and very happy conservative. Definitely a conservative. I mean, he is a Republican, but conservative is what defines him. And what was interesting for me during the Trump administration, when we broke a little bit of China in the national security field, you might remember, it was trying to redefine that policy as a conservative policy. And one thing I wanted to mention was Axios had some interesting polling about 10 days ago in which Republicans, which they identified as people who watch Fox News, in this poll said that they were the ones who were maybe the most cautious about open-ended support for Ukraine. And then the conundrum the reporter found was this same demographic were also the most intent on maintaining the United States' superpower status. And the reporters called this the intrigue. Like, at Heritage, we find those two positions perfectly compatible, that precisely because we want to maintain our superpower status, we need to look at Ukraine with a critical eye. That just is common sense from where we sit. So that's why I wanted to go to Heritage and the kind of things we're going to fight on.
Awesome. Now let's dig a little deeper, Victoria. You've been very critical of a certain administration in Washington, which will remain unnamed so that nobody loses their lunch. Thank you, Heritage, for lunch, by the way. But you've been very critical of the administration, Victoria, for, as you say, outsourcing our foreign policy to America's enemies. Can you say a little bit more about that, and also give us the more positive side of it, which is what does it look like, particularly in your area of expertise in national security, to play offense for conservative principles today?
Well, this really gets to the heart of what is emerging as our generational security challenge, which is the People's Republic of China. And we have a current administration that can sometimes talk a good game on China, but is also willing to allow China to really expand into this space. And I'm sure you all remember the spy balloon from last month, and that little episode. But then we've also had some recent diplomatic episodes. We've had the Chinese brokered deal between the Saudis and the Iranians. Apparently, they're working on a deal with Assad. They have the head of the European Union and the president of France in Beijing this week. So China is taking on the role traditionally held by the United States. It is my opinion that they are doing this because they know, the administration knows, if they're going to get to their climate goals, they have to have a deal with China. And so they are permitting China to expand and sort of do whatever it wants because they're ever hopeful that they'll tempt them back to the negotiating table on climate. The good news in this story, if there is any, is that nobody's terribly fond of China right now after what they just did to the world. You know, maybe they did it on purpose, maybe they didn't, I don't care. They did it and they tried to cover it up. And I think the United States, if they lean very strongly forward into that issue, force China to take responsibility for this in a number of different ways. It could be, you know, opening them up to lawsuits over losses from COVID. There could be other penalties levied onto them. You know, that the rest of the world will follow that leadership. And I know that in terms of partnership, particularly in the economic realm, there is no partner like the United States. People can say they're not going to trade in dollars. That's nice. I'd like to see what are you going to trade in that will have the same kind of reliability and value as a dollar. So good news is we have the resources, we have the potential to absolutely maintain our status as the global partner of choice and advance our influence that way. But unfortunately, I think it's going to take 18 months to get there.
Now, let's dive into a different subject on which you also have expertise, Victoria. In addition to being Deputy National Security Advisor in the Trump administration, you were Senior Advisor to the Secretary of Energy. For anybody who's wondering, you've seen many times speaker here, PLC speaker, Matt Briette, Dan Briette, who was the secretary Victoria served. There's no relation. It just turns out there's at least two. I hear maybe there's 3, 4, some of Matt's kids, conservative Briettes in the world, but there's no relation. All right, so that's on your resume, Victoria, that expertise in energy policy. A group like this, you know, again, having been at this conference since I was in college, most people here don't live in the energy belt of Pennsylvania. They live in the more populated areas of the state where there's, you know, more people than deer, more people than wells. Could you maybe help these group of Pennsylvanians understand a bit more, especially in the national security context that we're in right now? Why should they care deeply about the energy issue and our energy security?
It's really a critical topic, and I can thank Matt for having been named Briette, because it meant I knew how to spell my secretary's name when I went over to DOE, which is not an easy thing to do. But it has emerged, to my eye, over the last really 10 years, but most glaringly over the last 5, that energy security is national security. The demands for power in the 21st century are unparalleled. And at the same time that we are consuming greater and greater amounts of energy, we have an administration right now that is trying to force us into a first in human history, which would be to regress from a more dense, powerful energy source to a less dense, less reliable energy source in the form of renewables. And if we do that, we voluntarily abdicate an enormous strategic advantage, which is U.S. energy dominance, being one of the world's big 3 producers, along with the Saudis and the Russians, although we're getting after that one pretty well right now. Actually, they're getting after it themselves. But it is such a massive advantage. The Chinese don't have it. They're the world's largest importer, although they may be overtaken by India at some point. They will always be energy vulnerable, and they are scared of what we can do in energy. And Pennsylvania is really, literally, the keystone of U.S. energy security. We're the #2 natural gas producer. We also have robust coal and oil resources, which makes us one of the country's largest electricity generators. And we supply everybody. You know, New York State, for example, which has prohibitions on coal-generated electricity, buys clean, coal-generated electricity from Pennsylvania every day. We should stamp those megawatts as they go into New York so they can write us a thank you note. But I mean, the notion that I'm going to be reading in the Wall Street Journal about potential brownouts in New England this winter and then going into spring is absolutely ridiculous. No American should be energy vulnerable in 2023. I mean, that is just a dereliction of duty. And so Pennsylvania has to remain this sort of thriving heart of energy generation for the entire East Coast and going down into the South. And the idea that we would deliberately undermine that strength, I find a shocking development. It's a great thing for Pennsylvania. It's jobs, it's revenue, and then it's literally helping our neighbors. So I think it's a critical topic going into 2024. It should define the races in Pennsylvania, but I also think it's going to define the national races as well.
Yeah. Now, Victoria, let's go into one of the ways where we are hampering our success, or at least they're trying to hamper our success here in Pennsylvania. Commonwealth Foundation's done a lot of polling on the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, RGGI, right? Which what our polling shows basically is most people think in Pennsylvania that RGGI is a nickname for Reginald and don't know anything more about it, which is a shame because folks on the left are trying to ram this through. It's basically a Green New Deal for states like Pennsylvania. Our previous governor was a big fan of it, as you know. Our current governor has taken both sides of the issue, and so that creates the need and the opportunity to resolve, like, which is it going to be? Are we going to do this? Are we not going to do this? Could you maybe help the folks here understand what is this RGGI thing, and why should they care deeply about? Why is it part of what you were just talking about?
Yeah, RGGI, it's a cute acronym. They're trying to make it sort of fun and cute. It's not. It's the devil. Basically, it's the means by which you will turn Pennsylvania into California. And I can imagine how popular that would be.
Did you guys get that? You want to be California?
Ooh, ooh. I'm from Philadelphia, so I boo a lot. But
Go ahead, Victoria.
Sorry.
That's great.
But what it basically does is impose an emission cap on Pennsylvania that will enormously hamper our ability to produce electricity. It will lose us billions, tens of billions of dollars in revenue. It's going to cost us tens of thousands of jobs. And mercifully, the state Supreme Court put a stay on this thing last fall, saying it was unconstitutional because it represented a tax that had not been passed through the state legislature, which is absolutely accurate. It will be a tax on each and every one of us, and none of our elected local officials will have the opportunity to vote on that or make our wishes known. It's just going to be imposed on us by Democrat politicians in Harrisburg. So Wolf was slowed down by that. And Shapiro, who obviously as a politician realizes that once folks learn about this, they're not going to like it very much, has said, oh, you know, I'm really cautious about Reggie on the campaign trail. But if you look at his budget, he's hiring people. He's claiming the roughly $700 million he thinks it's going to bring in revenue to offset the tens of billions it's going to cost us. Doesn't talk about those, but oh, we're going to get revenue from this to the tune of $700 million. That's in the budget, and so I think questioning where is he getting the money for the salaries for those 17 people he's hiring to implement Reggie while it's under a stay from the Supreme Court, and then insisting that we make that stay permanent. You know, we put a hold on this thing. You might know in Virginia, which already is a member of Reggie, Governor Youngkin's trying to get out of it, recognizing how damaging it can be to the state. But again, this is just another way they're trying to damp down what has been a great renaissance for Pennsylvania in energy development.
Well said, Victoria. And I got to tell you guys, you know, they put speaker on my name tag, but really what I am today is an interviewer, and I've had the pleasure of interviewing Victoria a time or two. I've never cracked up in the middle of something she was saying, like when she made that comment about, I'm from Philadelphia, I boo a lot. So I still have things to learn,
It's
you know.
it's in our nature. It's what we do.
It's very true. It is what you guys do. Just don't throw any 9-volt batteries today, okay? Now, I'm going to ask Victoria one more question, but before I do that, I'm going to make an ask of you all. Maybe you didn't know that was coming. But if what Victoria just said aggravates you, if you're sitting there saying, well, I don't want to be California, and I didn't know that this thing was pending, well, guess what? There's a booth out there. It's got a big torch on it. And if you don't, you know, if you need to look at your name lanyard to remember what the torch looks like, it's on there. Commonwealth Foundation. We would love to help you advocate with your lawmakers to make sure we hold Governor Shapiro to his rhetoric about, well, I'm not sure this Reggie thing is such a good idea, and make sure we stop it. It's great, you know, as Victoria said, that the courts have paused it, but they haven't stopped it. And your lawmakers can stop it. And good news, in 1988, something sprang from the loins of the Heritage Foundation to help you do it. So if you're not helping, talk to my colleagues out there after this panel. All right, Victoria, last question. We've talked about certain areas of your expertise. Just anything else, or more broadly, give us some more nuggets of what it looks like to play offense for conservative principles today as opposed to 50 years ago when Heritage Foundation was created.
Well, it's been a fascinating trajectory over the 50 years of Heritage's progress, and under Dr. Fulner, Heritage was the tip of the spear during the Cold War, during the Reagan era, helping to defeat the Soviets, bringing on the American century. And it's interesting to me is that as Dr. Fulner has been retiring this year, he was asked on stage recently at one of our meetings, what was your biggest mistake? And he said China. He said that we were so focused on the Russians and the Soviets, and there's obviously a good reason to focus on the Russians. Not saying take your eye off that ball, but at the same time, we let the Chinese threat metastasize and build, and we actually fed it. And so I think, this is something President Trump saw very clearly. I think all of our candidates as Republicans will see this very clearly going into 2025. But both the counter China, but also promote America side of that is where I think conservatives can play the strongest role. We don't like getting engaged in endless foreign wars. We do understand the need to project and sustain American power, that we have to make this an all-of-country, I think, effort to confront China and then make sure we have another American century coming for our children and grandchildren. And I think the great news is that we can do it. I think Pennsylvania is central to that effort. And you know, I am going to come away from this conference, I think, with a great deal of optimism and a great deal of determination to make our national security principles as conservatives, be it on energy, on immigration, on these issues that touch us all here at home, front and center for 24. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Victoria Coates for her remarks and her service. Thank you very much.